So I spoke to 70 leaders, chairmen and chief executives of large global commercial organizations, charities and public sector organizations to try and understand what it was they did to be more inspiring. And I then married that with my experience of 40 years of working with leaders across a wide range of sectors to try to understand what is it that each of us should be thinking about and then doing more in order to be more inspiring. And what I found was that there are 12 principles of inspirational communication. And it was what all of these leaders were doing themselves. And the 12 principles, very simply put, are: 1, you have to learn to be yourself better. You have to learn to lead with authenticity and with passion. And that sounds easier than it actually is, because how do you unlock your passion, reveal more of yourself, show people what you stand for, and lead them in a way that inspires them because they want to follow you? That principle is something that we focus on in the book, and which gives guidance on how to be more authentic and how to unlock your passion so that it inspires other people's passion. The second principle is all about giving people a compelling sense of purpose and a very strong set of values. The leaders I spoke to talked about spending 80% of their time talking about purpose and values, because a strong sense of purpose and a strong set of values liberate everyone in the organization to make decisions. So the more time you spend thinking about what is your purpose and why is that purpose important to everyone outside the organization and inside the organization. And by the way, it shouldn't be a purpose focused solely on making a profit. It has to be something that everybody thinks is important and of value to them. So it's about creating a shared sense of purpose. But values become critically important, because the values that you have as an organization drive behaviors. And therefore, what behaviors do you want in the organization that will help you to achieve your objectives? The third thing is leaders spend a lot of time focusing on the future. They use the future to drive the present. And so most leaders that you talk to who are really compelling spend a lot of time ensuring people are thinking about the future all the time, not just on the now. Of course, the now is really important, but you always have to have the future in mind and to be moving to the future. So using the future to drive the present was one of the critical parts of leadership. But then you have to use the outside world perspectives that people outside the organization have to drive what you do inside much more. So bringing the outside in was the fourth key principle. And I saw lots of leaders spending a lot of time finding ways to bring outside perspectives into the organization to drive decision making and action. The final part of what I call the core element of inspirational leadership had to do with engaging through conversations. Engagement is the holy grail. How leaders engage their people is critical. If employees really are engaged, they will perform brilliantly. So how do you engage them? And the answer is, simply put, through high quality, regular, systematic conversations. Conversations drive change. And leaders have to learn how to have the conversations in a more constructive way, and how often to have what I call those courageous conversations that you need to drive change. Then you need to learn to be more audience-centric. And by that I mean you have to be focused on the audience, their needs, in order to be able to communicate effectively. That means you need to address the issues on their minds first, before they'll actually hear what you'd like to say. And so you've got to learn to understand and think about what's on their minds, how are they thinking, how are they feeling, and what are they doing that you want to change in order to be able to achieve your objectives. And when you can relate to people in that way, you can get them to listen to what you have to say. But listening is a critical skill, and that's another key principle which many leaders are not really good at. Learning to listen brilliantly is probably one of the most inspirational things you can do. I've heard many stories from leaders talking about how giving someone a darn good listening to actually motivated them more than anything they could ever say themselves. So listening is a key skill. I then think having a powerful point of view is critical in today's world. We're living in a world of a million points of view. And unless you have a strong point of view, one that defines who you are, what you believe in, what you stand for, why it's important, what you want people to do as a result of it, then you're not going to achieve what you need to do, and you're going to get drowned out in a world of points of view that everyone has the ability to put up online and simply overwhelm yours. So you've got to have a strong point of view. You need, therefore, to learn to tell stories better. Stories are the secret weapon of great leaders. Leaders who tell great stories can use stories as a kind of stealth fighter of the key messages they want to deliver to all the people that they need to influence. So learning to tell stories better sounds silly, but actually is probably one of the most powerful things that good leaders do. One of the areas that I found most interesting of all was the idea that many leaders are completely unconscious of the signals that they're sending. So they say one thing, but actually they then do another. And when people are watching you and observing your leadership, they're going to pay a lot more attention to what you do than what you say. And so you have to learn to be more cognizant of the micro signals and the macro signals that you send. Micro signal could be walking through the office with a bit of a grump on, and everybody will notice that. But the macro signal will be something like, I don't believe in bullying, but then letting a high-performing salesperson get away with bullying because you want their revenues more than you want good behavior. And employees will take their signals from what you do, in which case whatever you say will be overwhelmed by those signals. So being more conscious of signals is another critical principle. And then sometimes you can use them to your benefit. If you know what signal you want to send, you can then send signals without using words. Of course, leaders, the higher up the organization they get, have to spend time on public platforms. And when they're out there giving speeches or giving media interviews or giving presentations, they really do have to be good. And they have to be able to deal with very probing, very searching, very challenging questions in the right way. So it's not good enough simply to get up and deliver your message well. You also have to be able to answer very challenging questions in the right way. So preparing properly for public platforms is probably one of the most important things you can do as a very senior leader. And then finally, the final 12th principle is never ever ever think you've mastered communication. And all of the great leaders that I spoke with and I've seen operating have always felt that they can keep learning, keep getting better, and keep trying to find ways to master communication, but knowing absolutely that they never will. So being able to take critical feedback, constantly learning, constantly adapting to circumstances, trying new ways of communicating, that's what I see great leaders doing all the time. So those are the 12 principles, and those are the things that the book deals with in much more detail, giving you a practical step-by-step guide to how to do it.